You know what day it is. It is game day, and you are listening to episode number 47 of the Play Your Position podcast. Kickoff, move the chains, and touchdowns. Welcome to the Play Your Position podcast, the world's #1 business podcast, sharing inspiring insights about success and struggle, achievement and aspiration, mentoring and mastery, straight from the end zone. I'm your host, Mary Lou Kaiser, and growing up a huge sports fan, I realized early on the many parallels between football and this game called life. The highs and lows, the wins and losses, the importance of showing up, playing hard, and making no excuses, no matter what. Each episode features fascinating stories that teach us how to become better, make a bigger difference, and win championship games with our talents and dreams. I invite you to subscribe to the show and become an official part of the PYP team so you never miss out on any of the great content or fun. As always, extended details about each episode can be found over on the show notes page at my website, pyppodcast.com. It is game day, and we've got a great show in store for you today because of my guest, Alessandra Colaci. Alessandra, are you ready for kickoff?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Fantastic. So Alessandra Colaci has been a strategist in social media and technology for over 10 years. She has worked with Fortune 500 brands and small businesses to help them grow online reach and increase engagement. In her own startup, she grew traffic to millions of monthly visitors and has been mentioned in publications such as the Wall Street Journal. She's a speaker on multiple topics such as marketing, startups, and emerging technologies, and she has got some pretty incredible information and stories to share with us today because of what she does. So, Alessandra, without further ado, listeners know that it is game day. You are suited up and ready to take the field. Tell us a little bit more about a typical game day for you. What are you doing with all these emerging technologies?
So on a typical day, I think online, a lot of times you have to really kind of figure out what's the thing that you want to focus on and not get distracted by all the shiny objects. There's always a lot of different things, especially with social media. So I focus on a few specific networks. I usually focus on Twitter, Facebook, and then now live streaming. And I produce assets or engage on some of those places. But really, I look at what is my goal for the next month and the next 6 months and put together kind of a step-by-step process of what I'm going to be working on for those different pieces for, this day and then the following week and see what I can do and see what kind of exciting things I can get involved in and networking and all those different things too.
So that's a really pretty new field in terms of our history as professionals. And I know that the listeners of this podcast come from a couple of different camps. Some are entrepreneurial and others are career professionals. Could you go into a little bit more, perhaps, detail about specifically the Twitter scene? Because I know when I'm out networking and I'm talking to people about social media, so many people give me that deer in the headlights look when we talk about Twitter. So maybe you could talk a little bit more about Twitter's value, what you've seen, what kind of returns you've seen, and the strategies that have worked for the companies that you've consulted with.
Yeah, I think with any social network, it's really, especially now because they're very mature, it's always going to be kind of that long game and putting in the time into building the networking and the communities that you're building online, but not just piecemeal, kind of doing it once in a while or doing it, 1 year being really strong and then not being strong in it. In my personal my Facebook and Twitter, but mostly especially Twitter, I was very active about 5 years ago when I had a startup, and it had a huge amount of impact on my visibility and just the people I was talking to on there. But then when I became a lot less active, it started to really kind of have that loss of the things I had built up. And so I realized how consistency is so important, just kind of building that and continue to build it. And if you do that, I think with Twitter, it's a lot of those networks of connections that you can't get anywhere else. You're not going to go on Facebook and become friends with someone that's really well known, but you can do that on Twitter and you can just kind of give back value in order to form those relationships. And that's what's really unique about it. I found it to be a huge strength in getting in front of people that I normally wouldn't get in front of.
Yes, I found that too in my Twitter experience. And one of the tools that has been developed for Twitter that you're now specializing in is this thing called Periscope. And I would love for you to talk a little bit more about what is this Periscope and in terms of the live stream, and again, what can it do for people? How is it being used and where do you see it going?
So Periscope is about 6 months old now. It's pretty new. I mean, it's almost like a little baby, newborn baby in terms of the social media space. And I got involved probably about 1 month after it came out. I was like, okay, what is this new thing? I hear some people talking about it. I usually try to get involved in technologies or betas really early to see if there's something that's going to grow and that I can see growth in long term. So I'll sign up for, beta invites of different startups or things like that to kind of see how they're growing initially and get a feel for if it's something that I want to get involved in. I got involved in Periscope, and the first live stream I did. So you literally just push a button to go live from your phone after you download the app. And I had just gotten the Apple Watch, and I am a huge geek. So I said, hey, I'm going to share this with the world and do an unboxing video. So it was a really natural kind of thing because it's something that a lot of times it's no pressure to do an unboxing video. You're just showing what you just got in the mail. And so I did that. And I loved it. I mean, it was one of those things where I had people coming in and commenting and asking me questions about which one I got and if I liked it and all those kind of things. And it was so different from any other medium I had ever used. And, mind you, live streaming is not new. It's not something we've had it for years, and there's livestream.com and Ustream and a lot of different ones that are desktop based. But what's really taken off is Periscope is on the phone. And so, it started on the phone as an app, and that has grown a community around it really quickly for that one reason, mostly.
Yes. And what are you seeing people getting from it?
It's everything from making new real life connections, maybe locally or anything like that, which we have done. We've met people locally here in Austin, and there are people that we never would have gotten to know. But we see that we have shared, values and interests and things like that. And they may not be someone that we're necessarily sharing knowledge, but we're getting to know each other via that as a social network and then meeting in real life. So for some people, they use it for kind of getting to know people around the world, or in terms of businesses or people who are looking for improvements in their career. There are a lot of teachers on there, people who go on there and teach the same way that they would a YouTube video or something like that. It is a little more temporary, but at the same time, you can offer that value and have people find you more organically than they would anywhere else.
Yes, I can see the value of that. And you just mentioned something that for listeners who aren't familiar with Periscope, one of the things from my understanding is the video that you create, live stream, is then recorded and available for 24 hours, but then it disappears. Is that accurate?
Correct. And so that's something that I think people are kind of saying, wait, but I do all this broadcast, and I work on something or I plan it. And then, which some people do, some people just go on and they say, kind of off the cuff, they talk to people, but other people plan their content, and they're thinking, wait, if I put this on YouTube, it would be available for forever. But if I do this on a live stream platform, it's going to be gone in 24 hours. And so I think that helps, though, because people feel like it's not as much pressure. If they do a live broadcast and are trying to get to know the platform, there are people who probably would never have done a YouTube video or never have even done video in general, and they're less intimidated by the fact that, okay, well, it's temporary. But there are tools to record them. And so now there are a few tools to record Periscope broadcasts and to save them online for later. So one of them is catch.me. And it's a very great tool to do that if you want to keep it for archives.
Because I think there would be some people who may have thought, oh, this is just going to be temporary, and then did a really great job at something and realize, hey, I want to keep this because I can really use this with my audience or down the road. So that's very interesting. So catch.me.
Catch.me.
Is coming out. And that, again, listeners, we are at lightning speed when it comes to technology, as everybody knows today. And new tools like Periscope are making it possible for anybody with a late model smartphone to broadcast from an event or even just from your living room in a teaching scenario. And the relationships that we can build through technology really can benefit everybody as we're all moving forward in our lives. And Alessandra, none of us can do what we do alone. And so I would love for you to talk about who has been an instrumental coach or mentor for you and influenced you to play your current position?
I think, it's interesting because thinking about this question, I feel like I've never asked for enough mentorship. It's one of those things where a lot of times I'm like, oh, I'm one of those people that learns on my own and kind of digs in and does all that stuff. But when I've started to listen to podcasts, for example, I found that I had, it was kind of like mini mentors where I would find people like Pat Flynn and John Lee Dumas that would be people that I listened to and was really inspired by and learned a lot from, took away kind of the mentorship they were giving to those guests. So that's more of how I've had mentorship so far, but it's definitely something that I want to get. I think it's important for everyone to have that aspect of mentorship in their life and to find someone who is a mentor or to be a mentor to other people too is really important as well.
It absolutely is. And again, the technology that we have available to us today makes it possible to get access to people like John, like Pat, like anybody in a space that you move in and tune in and become, it's that virtual mentorship where it is more one-sided because you're not interacting with that person perhaps directly, but you can still learn a lot. I think personally, it's so important to always have at least one person that you are tuning into or picking up the phone if you have that live and in-person relationship, because without that guidance, without the insights that they can provide, because they've walked the miles before us, we're just fumbling around in the dark. And there's nothing wrong with figuring things out on our own. I mean, that's the best way we learn, but it's a pretty lonely path if you just try to forge without. So I'm really glad that you brought up that you are leveraging podcasts for information and mentorship that you couldn't necessarily get right now in your current life because you're busy with your business and whatnot, but they're still there for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's one of those things where even if you find just a personal friend, there are some people that I'm starting to get to know now, or people who have become really close friends recently. And it's really kind of a two-way mentorship kind of thing where there are things that I'll mentor them on, and there are other things that I'll kind of bounce off of them and find that they really have wisdom to help with my directions or to help keep me focused. And so I think, a lot of times there's that great relationship building and it's for both people, it's beneficial.
It absolutely is, especially in the part of our journeys when things do not go according to our game plan, such as being sacked or intercepted, or we fumble the ball on our way towards something. Without those teammates around us, it can be pretty lonely. So I would love for you to tell us a story, Alessandra, about a time when you found yourself in this situation. Things just were not going well. What caused that to happen, and how did you recover?
Yeah, so kind of interesting story from when I had a startup. So my startup was called blingyblob.com, which is a hilarious name. And at that time, even back then, that was 2004, I think, I was looking for domains. There weren't really any domains. And I'm just like, I don't know, I'll just make up this name. And it worked out well. I thought it was hilarious and fun. And so that grew and grew and grew. And then I changed gears a little. I rebranded, changed the name, and then had it on a new domain. And it was kind of having a steady decline, I think, just because the market was changing so much. And Facebook was kind of coming into town, becoming a bigger player on the space for social networks. I wasn't really shifting gears fast enough, I think. So one time I went to look at the site, and I really hadn't been on the site in a little bit. And the site was completely down. And I'm thinking, okay, what happened? Like, why is the site down? I contact my server, and I had given them instructions to change one of the servers to another, a different server. And what had happened is they had actually mixed up the instructions and shut down the wrong one.
Oh, no.
And even worse is I didn't have a backup of the site and I didn't, have any kind of way to put it back up. And so they're like, well, we're sorry. There's no way we can do anything about this. It's something that's completely gone. So that was a major, 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 issue, obviously. I think at the time it was the right time to kind of move on. So it worked in the right timing. I think sometimes those things happen at a time that makes sense for you to switch gears and switch strategies. But, my parents were really helpful in and just giving me that encouragement that it's, it's okay. You can always be successful at something else in the future. And they gave me that comfort to know, okay, you can figure something else out and change gears. At that time, I actually entered the corporate world for a while, and that was what I ended up doing. But I think just knowing that the failure is not something that's going to completely kill you, and it's not going to be something that you can never recover from, is something that I've kept with me. And it's important to know, because there are small failures here and there, kind of every week. You have things that happen and you go, oh, okay, I can't believe that just happened. But if you can recover quickly, it's really important, and it builds on that, and you don't have that kind of lull in between.
That's true. Was that site income producing for you?
It was, but at the time it was becoming less and less significant. And so it was something that I did lose a monthly income, overnight. And
wow.
That was shocking. But I think a lot of times too, looking back in hindsight, and my husband asked me this the other day, like, what would you, if you could, the whole stereotypical, if you could go back in time, what moment would you go back to? And I sat there and I didn't even have to think about it. Actually, I just was like, I wouldn't have gone back to the corporate world. Not that I think for a lot of people, it makes sense. It's just, for me, it didn't make sense. It was something that I think if you are entrepreneurial, then you have to kind of push through and make sure that, it might not be easy. It might be really hard. You might have to kind of suffer through it a bit, or not have the lifestyle that you want to have, but it's well worth it later on.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it isn't for everybody, definitely. Not everybody is cut from the small business ownership, entrepreneurial cloth, which is perfectly okay. We need people to be working in more traditional jobs, and very grateful for the ones that do. So one of the things that I'm always curious about, Alessandra, is how you see the changes that have happened over the last 10 years. You were just talking about, Facebook was just into town. That was only about 7 or 8 years ago now, which is not a lot of time in the grand scheme of things. Would love for you to talk about the specific shifts or changes you've seen, and how have they either challenged or inspired you?
I think, there are certain things that come around once in a while that you can look at, and I usually try to look at all the factors. And in terms of where we are at as just a society, in terms of technology and all that stuff, and see if it's the right time. Because I think a lot of times things are too early. If you look at MySpace, for example, they weren't the first. They did it slightly differently, and it resonated well with people. And so, Friendster and some of the ones that came before them were the first social networks, but it just wasn't the right time. Like, it was the technology wasn't there, the people's acceptance of it wasn't there. And I think a lot of times, like Steve Jobs said, people don't know what they want if they haven't seen it before, for example. They're not going to be understanding that's something they want. And so there's been very few shifts that have felt like that to me. And Facebook was a clear thing that was growing so quickly. And there were certain things about MySpace that they didn't shift and pivot enough on quickly, that led to Facebook having that competitive advantage. And I think at some point in that 7 to 8 years, I was thinking, there's got to be something else that's going to come out, right? There's got to be something else that's going to be overtaking Facebook. But I think we've settled into a very strong position for the existing social networks. And there are some breakout stars like, Instagram and things like that. And the only other time that I've felt like this is the next big thing is with live streaming. And I think because of the fact that it's mobile, and mobile is a huge passion of mine, because it's changing the way we do everything. And so now with these live streaming apps, or even some that are kind of a combination of desktop and mobile, like blab.im, it's something that people are just really ready for it. I think they're ready for that connection that's more personal and getting to know people on a personal basis, but in bite-sized chunks. We like that kind of bite-sized entertainment. So I see this replacing live television, or even, television that's scheduled television programming, and becoming a huge shift in that market.
I see that too because I have two teenage children and neither of them watch traditional television. It's very rare that I'll come in and they're in the family room with the TV on. And I myself have moved away from television almost to the point of the only thing I watch is live sports because I love football and I love competition. So I don't want to watch those recorded. I want to see them in real time. And I think you and I were talking about this at a recent event we were both attending. Even the big teams or the NFL network and the MLB network and such are beginning to move into the live streaming because they realize that's what people want. We want to be consuming our stuff, our shows on our terms wherever we want.
Absolutely.
Not be stuck in our family room. Not that that's a bad place to be, but you get my point. What you're saying is you really are predicting that this is the direction. And again, my kids are in this next generation coming up and their behavior is definitely in line with that. They're not interested in regular TV at all.
Yeah. And it's so unique, I think, because we can have that. It's kind of a mixture of both. If you want to now with some of these tools, watch replays, or a lot of people are starting to archive these to YouTube and add some stuff around it to kind of make it more branded or things like that. So you have that aspect of it. If you want to say, oh, I missed this, I would really like to watch it. But if you see that notification pop up, or if you just go in the app and you're kind of treating it like a TV channel remote that you're clicking through and seeing who's on, and you could say, hey, I really resonate with this person. This is someone I like personally, or I just like their content, and you pick and choose. But there's so many options versus a limited set of channels, for example. And it's growing and growing and growing, I think. And that's super unique, I think, for live streaming. So it's entertainment, it's educational, it's a lot of different aspects of these things that we already do online and via mobile, but in a much more unique kind of channel.
Yes, indeed. Well, Alessandra, with that notion in play, I think it is time that we take the ball from the red zone into the end zone. And so you are in the red zone, and there are less than 30 seconds left on the clock. You are down by 4 points. It's third down, and it is now or never. Tell us a story about a time when you overcame this obstacle and ran the ball into the end zone for a touchdown that won the game for you.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's been with all of these kind of transitions. I got on live streaming really early. I was someone who was like, I don't know if this is going to be big, but let me really check this out. And so when I did get on Periscope, it was something that I got involved in that community so early that I had a lot of visibility quickly. It was much more fast tracked than any other time that I had been involved in any other kind of thing. And I kind of worked with a lot of those people to build those relationships. And I met a lot of new people, found a lot of great connections, and just really jumped into that space quickly. So that has been the thing that has given me that competitive advantage. And I think if I had overthought it, that wouldn't have happened. It would have been like, oh, do I go live? Do I not go live? But just going for it and really learning as you go along has been the competitive edge for me.
And I love that because it speaks to the way life is today. Whether we like it or not, things are moving at a rapid pace. And if there's such a fine line between taking the time to think through something and just going for it. You and I run in a space where more of us go for it than hold back and really think about things. And sometimes you have the big score and other times you don't, but you won't know unless you go for it. And so I really commend you for being that fast action taker and saying, I'm just going to try this because you got nothing to lose. Mm-hmm. And here you are really ramping up and becoming a voice in that Periscope space and live streaming on a broader sense with your podcast, with the conferences that you're attending and just the visibility that you're getting. So I really, congratulations on that. And as we come to the end of our conversation today, Alessandra, would you please share 1 to 3 key offensive strategies straight out of your playbook that listeners could implement right away to move the chains of their lives and or businesses forward?
I think learn as you go along, do something where you try something, you learn from people who are already doing it, but it's always going to be different for you. So figure out what works. Don't be discouraged when there's something that doesn't work. Just change gears and try something else. And, really jump into getting to know a lot a lot of people that have your same passions and your same interest, and will bounce things off of you, will make you excited to learn more about that particular topic, or to grow in that space. And, really just, I think, keep a positive attitude. It's one of those things where in anything, in careers and business, it's sometimes there are things that can get us down. But if you really think through that, I'm going to do this and I'm going to be successful at it, and you say that out loud to yourself, then you can really conquer a lot of things, and you can project the kind of successes that you want to have in life.
Oh, timeless advice. We cannot hear that enough. Thank you for that. And I know you have a podcast and some other places that you hang out online. So would you share with listeners the best way for people to find you, connect with you, and get more about what you're doing?
Definitely. So my podcast is the Influence Buzz podcast, and it's where I interview people who are rising stars in live streaming, and also give tips and tricks on how to improve your game on live streaming. And so that's where you can find me in iTunes and Stitcher. And then I am also on Twitter at Alessandra Co. And I'm very active on Twitter. I love it as a place to just get to know people and share great information. And so for the Influence Buzz podcast, you can also find more content at influencebuzz.com. And we're really ramping up a lot of different content around live streaming to educate people and help them grow, whether it's for personal use or for business use, and learn how they can improve their live streaming.
Fabulous. And listeners, as always, links to all the places Alessandra just shared will be found on her show notes page at pyppodcast.com. Alessandra, and that's ALESSANDRA. And that'll pop right up for you, and you can click the link and easily find her podcast, connect with her on Twitter, and just get a better sense of this whole live streaming scene. She is definitely a leader in the space. So if this is an area of interest for you or the company you work for, you are going to want to connect with her. And Alessandra, this has been such a pleasure getting to know you better, having you share what you know about getting that ball into the end zone. I really appreciate your time, and have a great rest of your day.
You too. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to another inspiring episode of the Play Your Position podcast. Head on over to pyppodcast.com for more insights, inspiration, and great content. This has been Mary Lou Kaiser. On behalf of my team and all the amazing guests here at PYP, you know what to do. Get out there and make it a great day.